Good morning. Welcome to the second episode of the Big Table Bible Talk podcast. Today we have Richard and Chris with us this morning, and we'll be talking about Colossians chapter 2. So be sure and stick with us to the end, and we will kind of talk about what's coming up. So thank you for being here. Please comment, like, and subscribe. So Colossians chapter 2. So how would you summarize just overall this the Colossians chapter 2 or whatever we've covered, and anything that stuck out to you about what we read in Colossians chapter 2?
I find everything about the Bible 2,000 years ago is so present today. And what has happened to Colossians is external influences come into the church through Judaizers and false teachers. And they are, it's like an infiltration. It's a sin oozing into the church. And Paul is upset by this. And because the same thing that's happened to them happened to Ephesus as well. And I believe in there he speaks about falling out of love with their first love. In other words, falling out of love with Jesus when they were first exposed to him, and now because of this outside influence, it's becoming Jesus plus works, Jesus plus following the festivals, worship angels and so forth.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, do you remember when you first got saved, or when you were on the most fire, and how that was just amazing? And sometimes I look back at that and think, and I see exactly what you're talking about happened to me. It just kind of wanes. You just that excitement that oh, I got to go tell everyone. That kind of dies if you don't stay on top of it. And that was what Paul was encouraging them to do, was to get on it. Then it does. It can fade, and you still believe, you still have faith, but you're not excited about it anymore. And I think that is a description of the first love, is the excitement that came with it. Because I still can remember how excited I was. And I feel like that I am excited now. So that's good, but
that's what I was going to say. Don't you have an excitement now, but it's more solid, that it's more disciplined than that first rush of joining the kingdom?
Yeah.
Not that that's not exciting, and that that's a magic time for everybody, but it's
Our faith, not Christianity, but our faith, it matures over time. When we first start out as young Christians, yes, it's new to us, and we're on fire about this. And as we study and continue to grow in faith, it doesn't necessarily wane, but it's like it levels out. And I know that I was doing some reading, and it talked about when you're a young Christian, young faith, that God communicates with you quite often because you're in that, we'll call it, infant stage. But as we mature, we hear from him less often. And it's only because now he's saying, okay, now that you don't hear from me all the time like you once did, do you still love me? Are you still there? Is your faith still there? God tests us. We don't test him. And I think over time, he'll test us along the way to make sure that we're still rock solid.
That's good. That is good. Yeah, I definitely agree with that. But the love also, I believe that love is a choice. That it's not at first it is kind of an emotion, and that's the way it is when you met your wife. At first it was emotional love, but then it turns into love choice, that I choose to love. Just like just like anything that you
Yeah.
know. I mean, and that's just me. I'm not always right, except to me. So, but you lose your first choice of what you're loving.
But when you call it maturity, just like a baby grows, as Christians, we're supposed to grow. And then maybe God will take a little bit more hands off from you.
Mm-hmm.
And then it's up to you through study and prayer. How do you continue to grow?
Yeah.
Stay in the Word.
Right? Stay in prayer and keep loving people. Keep loving God. And sometimes that's difficult because we have all these ups and downs through our lives. And
Our faith is not a class that we take, and at the end of the class, you graduate, it's all over, you're good. Our faith is a journey over our life, our entire life. I was just sitting here looking at verse 2. It says, Paul speaks of the fullness of the gospel, which marks a mature believer, which gives him the joy of the assurance of salvation. As we grow in faith in the things that we learn, we become more sure about our salvation.
Mm-hmm.
but if we become too relaxed, then there's the danger of becoming
Well, sure.
lukewarm.
Yeah.
And just saying I'm a Christian, but what are we doing for
Which
the kingdom?
was one of the church's problems. Jesus said, "You become, you become lukewarm. I'd rather have you hot or cold, but not lukewarm."
Mm-hmm.
And that's right.
It says in 2:6 that you must continually walk with him, in my version. Speaking of Jesus. So I think that's a daily thing. Just like a friend, you would daily walk and talk with your friend,
Mm-hmm.
daily prayer, listen, and try to act as he acted, emulate him.
Mm-hmm.
In verse 3, it mentions that these false teachers claim to have a secret wisdom, which catches my attention because there's a lot of labels that you could attach to that. People or groups that say that they have this secret wisdom, they have knowledge that I'm not going to name any names, but that they know more than you know because they have this special wisdom.
Yeah. Yeah, well, that's how cults get started. Is special wisdom.
Yeah.
And so, but all the truth is actually in him. Jesus. All the truth is in Jesus.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
But also in 5 where he talks about that I am not presently, I'm absent in body, but with you in spirit. So that indicates that your spirit can go out from you, not leave you, but your spirit is, what does that mean?
Well, it's definitely a spiritual battle.
Okay.
This whole book is about the spiritual battle, not just only the physical battle.
Right. And the spiritual battle is more real than the physical battle.
Yeah, we deal with it every day. I mean, what the old story about the two wolves inside of us fighting.
Mm-hmm.
Every day we have a spiritual battle.
Yeah.
I read somewhere it says at the end of the day you measure yourself on your spiritual battles. As long as the good spirit wins more often than the bad spirit, I think it's kind of making light of it. I don't intend to do that, but it's something we battle with every day.
Mm-hmm. I agree.
Right from wrong. As one person said once, if you have to ask if it's a sin, it is.
Yeah. But okay, back to number 5. What do you think it means when it says, even though I am absent in the body, nevertheless I am with you in spirit? Is this Paul talking?
I think so.
It is, because
And
he's
he's
rejoicing to see their good discipline in the way that they're doing. Okay, what does it mean to be with you in spirit?
Well, I can't physically be there. He was writing from the prison.
Yeah,
So he's telling them, because they had never even met Paul.
right.
He said, I can't be there with you right now. I'd love to, but I can't because I'm in prison. But
So if I'm praying for you, am I being
Right.
with you in spirit?
Yes.
Okay.
There
All
you
right.
go. So,
Okay. Well, that's a good
I think so.
answer. I think so too.
well, I'm going to go out on a limb a little bit here. And in verse 8, where it says, "See that no one take you captive through philosophy and empty deceits, according to the tradition of men." And then when you take that in context with what he talks about, the flesh and circumcision, and I think Paul is switching gears here between two extremes: the pagan traditions of the Greeks and the Romans of a pantheon of gods and philosophies and Socrates and an orderly way of life that these people, these Gentiles in Greece, were living under. And then also the Judaizers and the Jews who, with good intentions, were thinking that bringing in traditions of a Jew, you had to be a Jew. And I think what Paul's saying to me anyway, as I read this, is the middle ground of these two extremes is where you're going to find Jesus, where you're going to find your faith. Not through doing just like the Greek philosophers did and letting these gods, that pantheon of gods that the Greeks had, seep into your worship, or that these traditions of the Talmud and the Mishnah of traditional extra biblical things of the Jews, don't let them creep in from the other side. It's hard to not swing. We see this in politics today. People that are really far right, really far left, probably most of us would agree the truth's somewhere in the middle. And I think that's, to me, that's what I'm reading God say here through Paul to these people, to focus on the Word, focus on prayer, and don't let the devil, let these other things seep into your worship and your practices.
Do you think they said you can't, like to the Jews, do you think that the Jews felt like that we cannot be part of this unless we are able to bring in some of our stuff?
I think
Say that again.
Do you think that the Jews thought, okay, we can't be part of this Jesus thing unless we bring in some of our stuff? We cannot just abandon our faith to go there. But on the other side, the pagans were required to eliminate it all, get rid of all of it, and come in.
I see what you're saying.
So, were the Jews, was this holding them or enabling them to be part, or is it something they should have given up?
Or were they all seeking compromise? And that's how you blend a lot of times. And in politics, we see compromise, and it's a virtuous thing in politics a lot of times. But God is not politics.
Right.
There is one true way, and that's through Jesus, for both Jews and Greeks to be saved. And that's described here in this book.
Mm-hmm.
So I think, to me, that's the warning: is don't let things seep in to this worship of God through Jesus.
Yeah. No, I think that you are right on, especially with that ending there. That.
You know, at one time we studied this, and it was Paul was talking to him about, you know, the Gentiles are grafted to the tree, which is the Jews. We're grafted to that tree, and he was kind of fussing at both of them, saying, "You don't worry about these habits, these rituals that you have. the Jews had a problem with the things that the Gentiles were doing, and the Gentiles were having a problem with what the Jews were doing. And he said, focus on Christ. Don't get tied up in the small stuff. And it was small stuff to him, but it wasn't to the Gentiles and the Jews. But just get past that.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if that made any sense at all, but
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And once,
I mean, to this day, they still struggle over with the Sabbath.
Right. So yeah, there's a lot of struggles within different groups, and I can even say in Messianic Judaism, there's struggles about what's tradition
Yeah.
and what's just acceptable as far as following the word. What do you guys think about verse 14? That's a pretty often quoted verse in the Bible.
mm-hmm, having canceled out the certificate of debt consisting of decrees against us, which was hostile to us, and he has taken it out of the way, having nailed it to the cross. What do you think? Either one of y'all. I just read it to sidestep.
My notes, I got, all people owe God an unpayable debt for violating his law through Christ's sacrificial death on the cross. God has totally erased our certificate of indebtedness and made our forgiveness complete. It mentions nailing it to the cross. This is another metaphor for forgiveness. During this time, the list of crimes of a crucified criminal was nailed to the cross, with that criminal to declare the violations he was being punished for. Christ's crucifixion paid the penalty for all of us, thus satisfying the wrath of God against crimes requiring punishment in full. I don't know if that answers your question, but that's what I had.
That's pretty good.
Yeah, because I don't, people want to say that that's the law that was nailed up there. But the law was given to us to show us, to reveal sin to us. But it's the indebtedness. It is your sin that when it says that it's nailed to the cross, it's my conviction or my certificate of indebtedness. It's not the whole law. It's what I've done that is against. But do you think, also, I mean, past, present, and future? It has to be yes, because you can't re-crucify him.
No, I think it's past, present, and future.
I do too. But I really appreciate that. I learned something, that's why I like hanging out with you guys. When they put King of the Jews on the cross, I never gave that much thought, except that it was a squabble between Pilate and the chief priest. But they had to put something on there.
That was the only crime they had against him.
Because they said, the leaders of the Jews came back and said, hey, no, say he said he was King of the Jews. And Pilate said, no, I've already written it. I'm going to leave it. King of the Jews, which wouldn't really be a crime. According to the Pharisees, they would have thought that it was a crime to say, I said I was King of the Jews. But Pilate, the Roman in charge of the occupation forces, put up there himself, Jesus, King of the Jews. So that was his indictment.
Mm-hmm.
And so I never realized that was a legal indictment. That was
Yeah,
supposed to be on the
be.
cross.
It would be. That's what he had to put, because there is no other king higher than Pharaoh.
Right.
So if he was saying he was the king of anything, that would be
Or
a crime.
Caesar.
Caesar.
Yeah, I guess Caesar.
Yeah.
Okay.
So
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
that's really good. And but he really was King of the Jews. He's the king of everything, and he's in the line of David. So it ended up being truthful. And Pilate himself had said, I found no fault with this man.
Mm-hmm.
So he really the indictment had been returned insufficient.
Would that have clued the criminal on the cross next to him? Would that have clued him into who he was talking to because of what was on that placard and what it said, for him to say the things that he did say to Christ?
The one that said
King of the Jews.
the one that was joining them and mocking him, or the other one?
No, the other one. The
one that got saved?
Yes.
That would be saved?
Yes.
Yeah, and I'm sure all the stuff that they were saying to him,
Yeah. Yeah. I didn't take that in.
I just can't imagine.
Definitely could have influenced him in that way.
Yeah.
Yeah, because, and I wonder how much they all heard of this back and forth between the Pharisees and Pilate. Wonder if that was a public conversation or just between leaders. You know, hearing that I found no fault in this man.
Well, he brought him out in front of all that crowd of people that were in the courtyard, and he said, choose. It's Passover. You can choose to release a prisoner. And they said, give us Barabbas, which Barabbas, that means son of the Father, which Jesus actually is son of the Father, although Jesus means salvation. So, son of the Father, which is a false antichrist type figure, or the true salvation of men, which is Yeshua, Jesus. So they chose the
Counterfeit.
And the one that made the most logic, that he was son of the Father, not expecting that God could be so merciful, so loving, that he would send his only son to become our salvation through his sacrifice. They chose, like men and women often do in this world, they thought about it logically and made the wrong choice based on their hubris or pride or whatever, or anger.
I did not know that that's what
Barabbas.
Thank you, Barabbas. I didn't know that that's what it meant, son of the Father.
Bar, son, and Abba, Father.
That makes sense because Satan, all through the Bible, Satan comes up with cheap imitations.
Right.
So that would be his cheap imitation.
As he is today.
Interesting.
And this also is the one that says, do not let anyone, because he saved you, because he's the one who nailed your sin to the cross, took care of that. This is to make it so that you cannot judge anyone or be judged by what you eat or drink, your festivals, your Sabbaths, your moons, or any of that. I mean, he took it where there's nothing that you're going to do that is going to earn salvation except believe in Jesus.
There is no salvation plus. There's nothing else that we can do to increase our salvation.
Well,
Yes.
He speaks to us even today when it says, the rules and regulations are things indeed which have a reputation of wisdom in self-made religion, and having an affected and ostentatious and humble opinion of oneself. I mean, that's what this whole modern world is about. We worship ourselves. We think we're the smartest, the best society that's ever been, and then we make up all of this stuff. We make up religion, we make up political philosophies, socialism, extreme right. All of this stuff is manufactured by men to think that we are
To glorify ourselves.
To glorify ourselves. Well said.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I think that's it for this podcast version or episode. So I think Chris is going to have something to close us up with.
Yeah. stay with us next week when we go over chapter 3. 1 and 2, Paul has been talking about all the don'ts that this church needs to pay attention to. In chapter 3, he'll talk about all the do's that we need to do as a church. And it'll be interesting because it'll be a change of gears. Enjoyed it.
Yep.
Thank you guys very much. Be
Thank
sure
you.
and message. We love comments. We love likes and subscriptions. So anyway, thank you, and we will see you next time. Have a blessed day.